And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Martha McDevitt Pugh, and I'm the International Chair of Democrats Abroad. And I'm delighted to welcome you to this very special webinar featuring Arizona's Attorney General, Kris Mayes. And I'm joined today by our webinar team with Beth de Avila and Angela Fobbs. But before we get started, note that we have gathered together a number of questions that attendees have sent in, and we're all going to be asking those on the call today. So now I'd like to ask Beth to introduce the Attorney General.
Great. Thank you, Martha. Hello, all. I'm a fellow member of Dems Abroad, and I've lived in Barcelona for the last 12 years. I was born and raised in Prescott, Arizona, and I'm so thrilled that our speaker is here with us today. Kris Mayes is one of Arizona's strongest consumer advocates and an attorney who has distinguished herself as a fighter for the people in a lifetime of public service. This couldn't be truer. Born and raised on a tree farm in Prescott, Kris attended Arizona public schools with her brother and sister. Her mom was a teacher and her dad worked as a pharmacist. This is where I met Kris, and I clearly remember the impact she had in junior high and high school. She was involved in sports, excelled in academics, and used her voice to make a difference even then. It was clear to me she would carry on using her voice and strength to make the world a fairer, better place. We both attended Arizona State University, where I studied business, and Kris studied political science and journalism. She then went on to work as a reporter. Later, she earned a master's of public administration from Columbia University and her law degree from ASU. Kris served in a senior role working for Janet Napolitano in the early 2000s before being appointed to the Arizona Corporate Commission. She went on to win 2 statewide elections and served as a commissioner from 2003 to 2010 and was the commission chair from 2009 to 2010. Kris was admitted to the Arizona Bar on January 10th, 2005. During Kris's time on the Arizona Corporate Commission, her leadership helped create tens of thousands of high-paying jobs, saved Arizona consumers billions of dollars, and required utilities to produce more clean and efficient energy, including solar and wind. She also worked to preserve Arizona's water resources. Prior to her election as Attorney General, she worked as a professor at ASU's School of Global Sustainability and taught a course on energy law for the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at ASU. She is honored to serve as Arizona's 27th Attorney General, becoming the first mom and second woman ever to be elected to the office. And I'm proud to call her my friend. The clear stance she takes to make sure women are empowered, protected, and have the right to make personal choices is very close to my heart. Please join us in welcoming Kris Mayes. Kris, can you tell us a little bit about your journey on becoming the Attorney General and how important every vote is, especially in tight elections like yours?
Yeah, thank you, Beth. It's so good to see you. I don't know, growing up in Prescott, if we were ever imagined we would be on this Zoom together talking about what we're talking about and doing this, but so good to see you again. It's so good to see so many Democrats abroad. I'm so honored to be with you and to have this opportunity to have a conversation about the importance of protecting our democracy. I mean, Beth, you really kind of went through my journey to this point really well. And, I just want to start by saying thank you to all of you. I know there's a lot of Arizona voters on this call right now. So let me start by thanking you for for getting me over the line in 2022. As you know, I won by 280 votes in the closest statewide race in Arizona history. And if it hadn't been, I believe, from the bottom of my heart, I believe that it is true that if it hadn't been for are Democrats abroad voting for me, working for all of the candidates up and down the ballot, through phone banking, emailing, donating, all of the things that you can do from abroad, and voting, that I would not be sitting here on this Zoom with you and doing all the work that we're doing. So my race, and those 280 votes, shows that every vote matters, right? Every single vote literally matters. And I think there's one thing we can all, well, we agree on a lot of things, but we can definitely agree on the fact that these races in 2024 are going to continue to be close, especially in states like Arizona, but all of the major battleground states throughout the country. So votes from abroad are going to matter and could very well determine whether or not we continue to have an American democracy. And sometimes I can't believe that I'm saying those words. I said it in 2022, but it continues to be true. And it boggles my mind whenever I think about how close we came between sanity and chaos in 2022. And again, I think that's going to be the case in 2024. Obviously, I wanted to talk a little bit about abortion because we have been dealing, as you all know, with the insane 1864 abortion ban here in Arizona. And Beth sort of mentioned that we have been on an emotional roller coaster out here for a couple of weeks now. The Arizona Supreme Court upheld an 1864 near total abortion ban with no exceptions for rape or incest, which was obviously devastating and shocking. Then after way too much debate in our legislature, that ban was overturned and repealed. And I think it's important to remember that these bans, and Arizona is not the only state dealing with this. Many Republican-controlled states, with GOP governors or AGs, are dealing with similar bans, maybe not quite as extreme as this one, but they are out there. And it's why it's so important to elect Democratic governors and AGs to fight them. So this is a ban that was passed when Arizona wasn't a state. Women couldn't vote. Women couldn't wear pants. And when the Civil War was still raging. That's how bizarre and insane this was. But the official repeal of the 1864 ban obviously is a huge win for reproductive rights in Arizona, and freedom. And I'm so thankful for our legislators, Democratic legislatures, and the governor for having the grit and determination to get it repealed. But unfortunately, we are not out of the woods on this thing. The repeal will not take effect in Arizona until 90 days after our legislative session adjourns. And who knows when that's going to be? It could be later this summer. It could be in the fall. And so we could have a period of time between June 27th, when the abortion ban was scheduled to go into place pursuant to the Supreme Court decision, and when the repeal goes into place sometime later this year. And I'm still fighting to get the Arizona Supreme Court to put a stay on that ban. And I have asked them for 90 days so that I can consider appealing that ban to the United States Supreme Court or to another court. And so I just promise you, I am working overtime. My great team at the AG's office working overtime to try to get that, to make it so that women in Arizona never have to live under that insane ban. In the last month or so, I have spoken to more than 60 doctors, mostly emergency room doctors, but also chief medical officers throughout the state of Arizona, reproductive rights advocates. who have told me the chaos and the havoc that has been caused by, number one, the Dobbs decision, which of course, as you know, sent this back to the states, including states like Arizona that had these zombie laws on the books, and this latest Arizona Supreme Court decision. It's created pure chaos while also endangering the lives of women in our state. And, I've had conversation with doctors who said, they've literally said to me, Kris, how close to death do I have to allow a woman to get before I can avoid, so that I can avoid being prosecuted under these laws? Not only the 1864 ban, but the 15-week ban that is also in place, right? And this is already happening. These doctors have said, we are already sending women home who are having emergencies in their pregnancies so that they can get sicker. They have to get sicker before we can provide treatment in the state of Arizona. And that is so completely unacceptable in the year 2024 that's what we're facing. And so, and as you know, I promised, and every other Democratic AG across the land has said, that's, living under these situations, that I will never prosecute a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, a midwife, or a woman, or anyone helping a woman to secure an abortion. Never, ever will I prosecute as the Attorney General of the state of Arizona. And I've also said I will do everything I can in my power, in my supervisory power over county attorneys, to prevent them from prosecuting under these laws. The problem, and this is why we must get this ballot initiative, the abortion rights ballot initiative, passed in November, and in other states. I think Florida has one. A number of different states have abortion ballot initiatives on the ballot. The problem is that I will not be Attorney General forever. And the statute of limitations on potential prosecution is longer than my tenure as AG. So it's an area where, doctors are very fearful and women are in danger. I've even gone to the lengths of working with the California AG, Rob Bonta, and the California Governor, Newsom, and they are passing a law that will allow Arizona doctors to, on an emergency basis, get licensed in California so they can provide care in California. So it almost feels like an Underground Railroad kind of situation where we're trying to get it. We may have to, for a few months, find a way to get women and doctors over into the safety of California. But really, I'm certain in my core that this 1864 ban and all of our efforts, it will be the rocket fuel that will propel that ballot initiative to enshrine reproductive rights, abortion rights in the Arizona Constitution once and for all, and as well as in these other states that have these ballot initiatives. It's also going to, I think, dramatically improve the chances of Democratic candidates up and down the ballot in states where this is an issue. This, where I will tell you that wherever I go in Arizona, I have a woman walk up to me either in tears or just to hug me in the dry cleaners, in the grocery store, to say thank you for fighting for our rights, just in complete disbelief that Republicans tried to do this to us, and it looked for a while like they were going to be successful. So, I think it's going to if there's a silver lining, and there really isn't, but it is going to help propel Democratic candidates up and down the ticket. And I hope that, you know, we have to win these races. And I hope that my 16 months as Attorney General of Arizona demonstrates, sort of proof of concept of what happens when we elect people, candidates, especially obviously Democrats, who care about the people of our states. And I think you just look at what we've been able to do in my first 16 months as Attorney General because of 280 votes. We created the first ever reproductive rights unit inside the AG's office to fight these battles against the 1864 law. We also protected mifepristone, which is the safest form of abortion, medication abortion in Arizona. In those states, those of you who live in states that have Republican AGs, they lost access to mifepristone. I also created a workers' rights unit inside the AG's office for the first time in Arizona history to protect and uplift workers in our state. We created an elder protection unit in the AG's office to aggressively prosecute elder abuse in the state of Arizona, which is an aging state. We have an aging population. We recently put a long-term care facility in the hands of a receiver for the first time in our state's history because that facility was engaged in such abusive behavior and allowing so much abuse inside the nursing home. We have hired for the first time a full-time investigator to work on the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis that is plaguing our southwestern states, which has a relationship to another area that we've been working on, which is the terrible access Medicaid fraud that's been going on out here, in which, and this is hard to believe, but it was allowed to happen under the previous Republican governor because they just didn't care about government. A lot of this is about Republicans who don't care about governing, but they were allowing fraudsters to bring members of the Navajo Nation and the White Mountain Apache Nation, tribal members, to Phoenix to sober living homes and not providing substance abuse treatment to them, and fraudulently billing access / Medicaid for those services that they weren't providing. These people were making millions of dollars off of the state of Arizona and then allowing people to die and not get treatment that they desperately needed, mainly Native Americans. It was an outrage. I have called it the greatest scandal in Arizona history, and certainly the greatest failure of government. I believe that fraud will likely top $2 billion lost by the end of the day, and countless numbers of Native Americans harmed because of it. We've also beefed up our civil rights unit inside the AG's office and our environmental unit, as you know, and maybe it's because Beth and I were born and raised in Prescott, but we have a special sensitivity to water and protecting our water supplies in Arizona. And we still have not updated our groundwater laws, which has allowed this insane situation in which we are allowing out of state and out of country entities, including the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates, to come into Arizona and drop dozens, if not hundreds of wells into the ground in rural Arizona, suck our aquifers dry so they can grow alfalfa to send back to Saudi Arabia to feed their cows, where, by the way, they have outlawed the growing of alfalfa. So I am investigating whether I can use nuisance laws to essentially sue these entities for the damage that they are causing to Arizonans and to our groundwater supplies. And then finally, I'll mention the last couple things and then open it up to any questions that you have. I recently filed a lawsuit against a company called RealPage, which is a software company that was colluding with 9 major landlords who, by the way, do business throughout the country. So I think this is a nationwide scam, essentially, or antitrust violation. They were using this software in collusion with the landlords to bring in the landlord's proprietary data, and they were setting rents in Arizona at artificially high rates for all of the landlords. So all of the landlords would essentially use the same rent. And those rents are a huge part of our housing crisis and our affordability crisis. I call it old-fashioned price fixing using new technology. The Attorney General of the District of Columbia has also brought this lawsuit, and I think it's going to be something that other AGs across the country do as well. Finally, I formally opposed the proposed Kroger-Albertsons merger, which I believe would raise food prices in Arizona, and likely lead to the loss of thousands, if not tens of thousands, but at least thousands of well-paying union jobs. And we sued the major chemical companies responsible for polluting our groundwater with PFAS, which are the forever chemicals, carcinogenic forever chemicals related to PFOA. I don't know if any of you saw the movie Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, but these are similar chemicals, and we are suing those companies. And then I'll say our election protection unit is going to be very busy. We were talking about this earlier. Very, very busy between now, and we already have been for almost a year, between now and the election and after the election, to do several things. Number one, protect our elections officials. In Arizona, we have seen the loss in 2/3 of our counties of a top election official due to death threats, including Beth in Yavapai County, where we're from. 2/3 of our counties, a terrible brain drain. And what I have said is, don't even think about it. If you engage in a death threat or a threat of violence against an election official, I'm going to put you in jail. And I think it takes a tough message like that. And we already have several prosecutions in the books in these kinds of cases related to 2022 and 2020. And then secondly, there are several areas of potential mischief that we're really worried about. There's a movement in Arizona, maybe also in other states, to institute hand counts of ballots, which is really designed to, I think, wreak havoc on and after Election Day. Hand counts are illegal in Arizona. And then there, as you know, there have been attacks on our election procedure manual that we have that sets out the rules for elections in Arizona, including rules related to drop boxes. There have been efforts to attack drop boxes and the legality of drop boxes, and the signature verification process. So far, we've been successful in beating back those attacks. So anyway, I know so many, I'll just finish up by saying, I know so many of you here are working hard all the time to help get Democrats elected up and down the ballot. We need everyone on this Zoom call to keep doing that, to keep it up. Find 10 close friends, either abroad or stateside, who can help between now and the election. The fate of our democracy continues to run through Arizona and the battleground states like Arizona. We're at a critical tipping point in our country's history, where what we do literally between now and election day will spell the difference between having a democracy and not having a democracy. And so I hope you're with me that we're ready for the battle. We've got to gear up for the battle. It is coming. We're going to win it again. What gives me hope is that we won the battle in 2022 and we won the battle in 2020. Look at what we did in Arizona. The top 3 positions, statewide positions, are held by Democrats. And we are one seat short of flipping the Arizona legislature, which we absolutely must do. So we just got to continue to show Arizonans and the country and the world what it looks like when we elect Democratic candidates for office. And I will say this to end. The great thing is we continue to nominate awesome and they continue to nominate crazy. And so we're going to keep winning these elections for that and other reasons. So thank you again for having me join you. It's so great to be with you. And I'd be really happy to answer any questions or have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Mayes, for that incredible overview of all the work you're doing. There's some very concerning things in there. We are so glad you're on the job. So thank you. Democrats Abroad has a huge commitment to winning elections in Arizona this year. So let me just give you the first question that we have for you. Arizona voters abroad, we know we can make the difference in close elections. And we're working to mobilize our Arizona voters abroad with phone banking, emails, digital outreach, and at our website, votefromabroad.org, which is the only website that educates and supports voters on how to request a UOCAVA ballot from abroad, but also return their ballot from wherever they live in the world and ensure their ballot is counted and cured if needed. Can you tell us what Americans abroad can do to help protect our votes and the votes of others?
Well, I guess I would start by saying continue to do all of those things. And follow your individual election dates and deadlines for getting your ballots in. Obviously, getting ballots in sooner rather than later is super important, especially in states where we think the elections are going to be really close. And I think they're going to be really, really close in Arizona again. They're probably going to, very well could be close in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Wisconsin, some of these, all of these battleground states. And we do feel good about we feel good about going back to sort of early voting and the election procedures manual. We feel good about the fact that we've been able to beat back some of those challenges. Those cases aren't completely over, and I can talk to you about that, but just keep doing what you're doing, because as you know, in a race that's decided by 280 votes or 10,000 votes, or, which is what, President Biden won by. He won by, a few hundred votes more, 10,400, something like that in Arizona. Everything is going to matter.
Thank you. We're really clear because we brought 18,000 votes from abroad into Arizona to help bring President Biden, along with many others who did the same, over the line. And that's what we're up for again this cycle.
Wow. That we need it again.
We absolutely need it again. Great. Next question is from Ann Hesse from our Women's Caucus. Go ahead, Ann.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all you're doing. We know you're working hard on that stay and all. And it seems to me at the moment, Arizona is a tale of two competing futures, with the harshest possible ban versus abortion rights enshrined in the Constitution. So that's where we are. And we're all hoping, as you said, that the Republicans' efforts to uphold this strict 1864 ban has actually backfired. So do you think this could result in stronger support for the abortion initiative going forward, even among those conservatives like Senator Shauna Bullock, who stepped across the aisle to help you repeal that ban? And with Arizona voters registration distributed roughly 1/3 each from Republicans, Democrats, and independents, what's your feeling now, after all of this craziness, about how this large block of independents will break on the abortion issue in November?
Yeah, and I think you really kind of hit on it. And those independent voters tell the tale, in Arizona. And I think the polling shows in Arizona, especially, but all across the country, that the vast majority of Arizonans and independents are repelled by an 1864 ban. It is, I mean, literally, I've never seen anything like it. I thought the reaction to Dobbs was obviously important and dramatic, and it was. I personally believe that my election is very much attributable to Dobbs because it supercharged my campaign. I think so if you look at my campaign as presaging perhaps what this 1864 ban could mean in Arizona, and I think you can make that corollary, then it is absolutely going to impact races. And I absolutely believe that and I think we are going to flip the legislature, when we look back at what happened 6 months prior to that, it's going to be the 1864 ban. I feel it in the air. I feel it in the air, and I feel it when I'm out there with voters and with at events. I'm doing a lot of events trying to help flip the legislature. Even when like I said, when I go to the dry cleaners, when I go to the grocery store, and people are coming up to me, crying, hugging me, wanting to hug me to say thank you. You almost have to assume that is going to have a dramatic impact on the election. Now, we can't take anything for granted, right? There's going to be so much money spent on both sides of the political spectrum on the election. We know there are people sitting out there like Leonard Leo with $1.4 billion in money to spend on elections. And obviously the effort of the Federalist Society and Leo to try to capture the United States Supreme Court. But I think the answer is yes. If I had to predict today, I think the ballot initiative passes by 60%, which is really unheard of. But I think that's entirely within the realm of possibility. And I think that we are likely to, at a minimum, tie up one or both houses and maybe even flip those houses. And let me tell you, for both me as Attorney General and the governor, I'll speak for the governor on this, we need that, because while it's awesome that we have a Democratic governor who can veto crazy legislation, wouldn't it be even more awesome if we had a legislature we could work with and pass great bills and great legislation? I mean, that water issue that I described, we need water legislation. We need to upgrade the 1980 Groundwater Act. And we can't do that. I am left to file individual nuisance lawsuit against bad actors, but we need comprehensive legislation. We need to get the situation with our education funding resolved. We need more money in our public schools. We need to roll back some of these insane tax cuts that happened for the wealthy that happened under Ducey. which are causing a 1.6 or so billion dollar deficit in the state of Arizona. So yeah, I think the Republicans are like the dog that caught the bus. They have no idea. They have no idea what's coming at them in November.
Well said. Exactly. Yeah, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, but we still got to work our butts off to make that happen for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Our next question is from Katie Solon on voting rights. Go ahead, Katie.
Attorney General Mayes, and that has a really nice ring to it.
Thank you, Katie.
Years ago, the election procedures manual was not updated because one of the three people that needed to sign off on it, the Republican Attorney General, refused to do that, even though the Republican governor had signed it. This year, we have an updated, revised manual because the top three officials, like you just said, the governor, the secretary of state, and the attorney general, thank all the gods, are Democrats. We elected you in 2022. By the way, here's a flag from your inauguration.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So you sort of have answered my questions already. The first one is, what is the status of the various lawsuits that Republicans have filed to try to stop this manual from being implemented, even though it makes total sense and reflects actually what we have been doing in Arizona and need to do? The second question is, will we continue to have drop boxes and early voting and voting by mail and sufficient time to cure ballots, all of those things? So if you would talk about that. But we also have a question in the chat box that really applies to all of us. And that is the question about, why do some voters abroad, UACAVA voters, get a full ballot where they can vote for state and local officials and all of these critical issues that you've been talking about? And why do some people get only a federal ballot, which means president, Senate, and the House? And you might not be in the weeds on this. We are. We can answer that question. So whoever wrote it in the chat box, hang on till the end and we can answer it and help you get a full ballot. But if you know about that, and if you don't, we want you to know about it.
I don't know enough about it, so I would love to learn more. But let me answer those first two questions for you. So by the way, I checked in with our lawyers last night, and so this is very, very up-to-date information. So on the status of the various lawsuits that Republicans have filed against the EPM, which, as was mentioned, we approved. Actually, the governor and I and Adrian Fontes worked very closely together on, and got that into good shape and approved it. The Yavapai County Superior Court, Beth and I's home county, ruled in the Secretary of State's favor in two cases in late April, upholding the manual's provisions regarding drop boxes and signature verification for early ballots. So those will remain the same. Good news. There are three additional cases challenging various provisions of the manual, as well as one overall challenge to how the manual was promulgated. The Secretary of State, represented by me, has moved to dismiss each of those cases, and the Superior Court will be deciding those motions in the next month or two. For now, though, all provisions of the 2023 manual are in effect. So far, so good. Fingers crossed. The closer we get to the election, the less likely a judge is to try to sort of disrupt it or upset the apple cart. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed, keep working on those. Drop boxes, early voting, vote by mail, ballot curing. Here's what's going on. As far as we know, yes, all of those are okay, remain pretty much the same, except for the cure period, and I'll explain that. The Yavapai Superior Court decisions keep drop boxes and early ballot signature verification practices the same as they were for 2022. Those court decisions can be appealed, but again, the closer we get, the less likely that those, if there is an appeal, they'll be successful. The only change to the procedures comes from a bipartisan legislation that was passed to address some election deadline issues, which makes the curing period 5 calendar days instead of business days. So, so that was like a little bad because, it's kind of a little bit, and I think that was a compromise, that both sides came to. But the signature period, curing period, the law also requires county election officials to be open on the weekend before and after the election to permit signature curing. And it requires county recorders to provide lists of ballots that need curing to the political parties daily during the curing period. So that's good too. I will say, and I don't know if the Republicans are going to get their act together. I hope not. But we definitely had a much better curing effort than they did this last time. I personally went out and helped cure ballots. We had a massive effort that Mark Kelly's team and others and so many people participated in. So we've got the better curing effort so far. Yeah, so that's that update.
Thank you so much. We have another question, Attorney General Mayes, and I know your time is limited. Do you have time for another question?
Oh yeah, I'm good. No worries, as long as you guys do.
Great. So our next question is from Corey Lemke. Go ahead, Corey.
Hi there. So as you probably know, Arizona Democrats had a very strong ground game up in Navajo County in 2020, but word on the street is that Republicans have been creating barriers to inhibit efforts to increase voter accessibility in communities of color, particularly in Native American communities. Can you tell us about the status of efforts to ensure voting access for these communities?
Yeah, that is a great question, and that is true. They have been trying to throw up those barriers, and so here's the status of that. There are a number of newer provisions in Arizona election law that may disproportionately burden Native American voters have been challenged in federal court, and some of those have been struck down already. For some that have been upheld, like a new requirement that people registering to vote provide documentary evidence of their proof of residence. I know that the Secretary of State Fontes is working closely with county recorders and communities, potentially affected communities, to avoid disenfranchising qualified voters. In addition, many counties and the Citizens Clean Elections Commission are regularly reaching out to Native American communities around the state to try to increase access. Coconino County, for instance, has a staff member that is dedicated to outreach to the Native American communities within that county, and the Clean Elections Commission is now publishing its voter guide in Navajo and Apache, as well as American Sign Language and an audio version for those who are visually impaired. So there's yes, that you're right. There was, some effort to try to tamp down the vote in Navajo and Apache counties. Apache County, as you know, very, very important and strong Democratic county. I can remember during those 2 weeks after my election, just praying to God that we got an Apache County dump of votes. Like, give me Apache, please give me Coconino. Beth, I was not praying for Yavapai. Anyway, well, but anyway, so um, there are counter efforts. I think, Corey, is my point, to sort of like try to ameliorate the impact of some of that, some of those provisions. Again, if we can flip the legislature, we can take some of these bad laws off the books, right? And that's what's so important. There's so much that we can accomplish if we can just flip this legislature.
Thank you so much. Got one more question from the audience. From Laura in the UK. How will Arizona replace the election officials who have retired?
Oh God, that's a great question. I will say that Secretary Fontes has been very, very active in this space. He's been personally trying to recruit or help recruit the counties, recruit people. He has gone to all 15 counties and worked with county elections officials to help them. He has also offered them assistance from the Secretary of State's office. So they've been doing tabletop exercises as well. I will tell you on, for instance, cybersecurity issues, security issues. That's something that I am talking with law enforcement as well about, election day security and potential threats on election day, and how we deal with the situation that we saw in 2020 and 2022, where you had people showing up trying to intimidate voters at polling places with wearing face masks and body armor and carrying AK-47s and AR-15s. There's a balance that you have to strike there between having too much police presence that then also intimidates people, but also trying to make sure that people have the ability to go in and vote or even just drop off their ballot. This was happening outside the Maricopa County main ballot processing center. And so we've been talking and we'll continue to talk to sheriffs about that. And then Adrian Fontes, I think, is doing a fantastic job of working very closely, I think much more closely than any other Secretary of State, and being much more proactive in going out to every county in the state of Arizona to try to help them and help them bridge the gap. I do feel pretty good about, and I think the county recorders and elections officials feel pretty good about where they stand. And having that election procedure manual in place, and having a Secretary of State and an AG that have their backs is very helpful.
Great, thank you. One last question. When your term is up, will you run for re-election? You don't have to answer it.
Well, I'll definitely have to have a conversation with my 11-year-old daughter about that. Sometimes she's a fan of this job, sometimes she's not, but yeah, I intend to run for re-election to Attorney General. I really think I think it's interesting when you think about, I'm a big fan of Grant Woods, who became a Democrat like me. He had been a Republican, and he unfortunately died. He was one of the co-chairs of my campaign. He died in the middle of the campaign, but I had many conversations with him, before he passed away. And I often about AG and what you can accomplish as AG. And you can accomplish a lot as Attorney General. And I often wonder I often wonder why he never ran for governor, actually. He ran for attorney general twice. And I think it's because he came to realize just how much you can do, how much good you can do as attorney general. But I do think it takes 2 terms to do that. So that's my plan for now.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and dig into our questions today. Do you have any last word before we wrap?
No, I just want to again say thank you to all of you. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for focusing on Arizona, because the path to of our democracy runs through our state again. It really does. And you could very well make the difference in protecting this precious democracy that we all love so dearly, and that so many Americans fought and died for. And I think that's what this is really about, making sure that we honor their sacrifice and that we make sure that future generations are able to live under this system of government. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Great.
much. Angela?
So thanks everybody for coming today. And everyone who will see this on the recording, thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, please make sure that you have registered or requested your ballot in your home state, and so that you're ready to vote in the election this year. If you haven't registered, you can go to votefromabroad.org to get started. And Arizona voters, you can join the Democrats Abroad Arizona State team by writing az@democratsabroad.org. I'll put all these links in the chat. Just as a reminder, the Arizona primary is on July 30th. So pay attention to the intent to return question on your ballot request form. If you mark intend to return, you don't have to have a definite date or plan, and you'll get the full ballot, including the state and local races. So vote every race on your ballot. We hope you've enjoyed our global town hall with Attorney General Mayes as much as we all did. Your support goes a long way. So please consider making a donation at democratsabroad.org/donate. This way we can continue to bring events like these to Americans around the world. And of course, last but not least, we'd also love your support as a volunteer. It's all hands on deck time, and there are 50 days until the election. No, 50 days, that can't be right. 150 days till the election. So sign up at democratsabroad.org/volunteer to get involved. And we love, of course, first-time volunteers. So with that, we'll be ending the call. And thanks again to Attorney General Mayes and to everyone who took the time to join our webinar. And in just a reminder, we will be having a webinar with Florida Democratic Party Chair Nikki Fried on Wednesday. So please join us for that also. So with that, everyone, thanks for coming, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Kris.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, everybody. It's great to
Thanks so
see you.
much.
Thank you.
You
Thank you
too.
so much.
See you
Thank you.
soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.